Welcome, I am Detail74, and this is Metroid Dread Any Percent No Major Glitches. This video is intended as a submission to the Benelux Speedrunner Gathering Annual 2022, as well as a resource for anybody who may be trying to learn this category. As the run begins, I would like to talk first about what No Major Glitches, or NMG, means for Metroid Dread. In Metroid Dread, No Major Glitches consist of two parts. One is that we are not allowed to use any glitches that have been removed from the game via patch at any point. By doing this, we ensure that people can submit to the NMG categories from any version of the game, which makes them very accessible. Secondly, there's also a small list of specific tricks and glitches that are not allowed to be used, even though they are possible even on the most recent version of the game. However, that still leaves a very great amount of interesting glitches that we can use, which we will use to great effect all throughout this run. The first one of which is coming up shortly. But first we're going to head through a little bit of tutorial area and talk to Adam. The first glitch we're going to execute is known as a pseudo-wave, which is named after the wave beam item. If you're familiar with the Metroid series, you will know that the wave beam is an item that allows Samus to shoot through walls. And the pseudo-wave does exactly that. We're going to set Samus up in a specific way against a ceiling, floor, or wall to clip the arm cannon out of bounds and that way shoot through walls. This can be used to blow up blocks on the other side of those walls that we're not supposed to reach yet, which allows for a few sequence breaks throughout the run. The first one coming up skips the first Emmy sequence, which normally you would have to do and would take about a minute to complete. We're then going to immediately execute another pseudo-wave over here, which will allow us to play through the early game in a slightly different order. Here we're going to do a clever wall jump to grab this missile tank. This is going to make the Corpus Boss fight a few minutes from now a lot easier. Here we skip a cutscene with the Emmy and then immediately enter into this little chase sequence, where the Emmy is unfortunately very slow and we just kind of have to wait for her to catch up when we do reach the end. Most Metroid Dread runners will refer to each Emmy by their color, calling this one, for instance, Wemmy, since it's white, and the green one Gremmy, the blue one Blemmy, and so on. However, since I am colorblind and have a hard time telling the difference, I prefer to refer to each Emmy with a specific name. This is Maria. We're going to talk to Adam again, and then continue on. We have a few more rooms to get through, and then we're going to enter back into the Emmy zone and get chased by the Emmy some more. This gives me a nice opportunity to talk about one of the most important general movement techniques in this run. Ledge hopping. I'm going to do one right here. What I did just there was, just when Samus grabs onto the ledge, press jump again and hold towards the ledge to have her do a little jump up on top of it. This can save a little bit of time every time that you do it, and since there are so many ledges in this game, over the course of the run it can save lots and lots of time, and it is a very important technique. What I did just there was a ledge jump. Or, excuse me, a slide jump. I can't talk. If you've played any Donkey Kong Country games, you're familiar with this technique already, since it's pretty much the same thing as roll jumping in those games. You slide off of a ledge, and while Samus is in the air but still sliding, you're still allowed to jump as though you were on the ground, so you can get a little bit of extra airtime. It's a very helpful technique that we're going to use a few times throughout the run, mostly just for room strats, but also once to do a sequence break. Here, we're going to go through this little water section. It is possible to skip this by combining Artaria Water Skip with Magus Skip. The former trick is pretty easy, but the second one is a lot more difficult, and I have not yet gotten consistent enough at it that I find it worth to do in runs. As I move through the water, you'll see that I'm doing these little hops. This is slightly faster than simply walking normally. Here, we're going to get chased by the Emmy again. And unfortunately, we got some bad RNG, so I need to be very careful not to get caught here. Damn it. Luckily, on this run, I made the parry, so we can simply move on. But a lot of the time, if you get caught by an Emmy, you just kind of die. And usually, so does the run. Here, we're going to pick up our first major upgrade of the run, which will be the Charge Beam. The Charge Beam does exactly what it says on the tin. It allows Samus to charge up her arm cannon, releasing a very powerful shot. This does a lot of damage, can damage bosses, and allows you to open charge beam doors, which the area here is rife with. There's not a whole lot going on throughout these few rooms, which gives me a nice opportunity to talk about another general movement technique: ledge sliding. When running off of a ledge, like right here, it's slightly faster to slide off of the ledge rather than running off of it, since sliding will put Samus a little bit down over the lip of the ledge already before she's actually in the air. That way you need to spend less time in the air and can go back to full running speed sooner. This is very helpful when traversing through rooms when you're trying to go down. We've already been through this room once, but now with the charge beam in tow, it's a little bit easier. Not that my gameplay would prove that. This is where we did the pseudo waves earlier, and we're going to climb back up here and go to the right this time, where we're going to fight the Corpus Boss. This boss is relatively self-explanatory, and I'm going to shut up. We are simply trying to hit the head with missiles, and every time that it moves, I have to realize where it's going to move, so that I can hit it again. When Corpus is invisible, this becomes slightly harder, but for a seasoned player, it's still not that bad. Again, not that my gameplay would prove that. While we have a second, I'd like to talk about something about this run. This run allows turbo to be used with your controller, meaning a programmed controller that can give a certain amount of inputs per second, or a certain amount of inputs per minute, depending on your setting, when you hold a button. In this case, Dread allows turbo up to 20 inputs per second to spare players the need to mash for fighting bosses. I do not use turbo for this run, since it is intended as a submission to a marathon, and I think it would be better not to use it, but I do use it when I'm actually going for PBs. Defeating Corpus gives us the Phantom Cloak, which is a useful item, although it won't see too much use throughout the run. All of the cases that we do use it are very much required. We're going to use it to go through these motion detector doors, and this shows another interesting little bit of optimization. When heading into motion sensor doors, the Phantom Cloak would normally slow Samus down quite a bit, but by sliding first and activating the Phantom Cloak second, we can actually move into the doors with a full sliding speed, which is much faster than Phantom Cloak walking speed. This saves around 20 seconds over the course of the run, by my estimate. After hitting this lava switch over here, we can head back all the way to the west of Artaria, where we were before, to finally kill the Emmy that was in our way the entire time. There's not a whole lot going on here, so I will continue to talk about basic movement. Another important thing to note that we're going to be doing very often throughout this run is using the dash melee. The dash melee is a small melee attack where Samus dashes forward, as the name suggests, and bashes anything in front of her. It gives you a small burst of speed, but it has a lot of end lag, and so usually it's not worth actually just using in any old room. But in situations where the dash melee will be interrupted, say by a door, a loading zone, or a slope, it's actually worth to use it, and it will go slightly faster than simply running. There are a lot of different situations in which the dash melee is faster or slower for very specific reasons, and so sometimes it's a little bit difficult to explain, and I will very often just choose not to. Here we're going to fight our first central unit mini-boss. Defeating these gives you the Omega Cannon, which is a temporary upgrade that allows you to kill the Emmys. We're going to take the Omega Cannon and try to defeat Varia, where, after doing so, we will receive the Spider Magnet upgrade. Here, I will do a little dance. The Spider Magnet is an item that allows Samus to grab onto blue surfaces, which can be used to climb up to places that we couldn't reach before. However, additionally, when Samus is hanging from such a blue surface, specifically a blue wall, you can do a special kind of wall jump that functions a little bit differently from an ordinary wall jump. In Metroid Dread, when you wall jump off of a wall, there's a certain time period in which Samus is locked into that movement, and you cannot influence it by any means. This makes sure that you cannot simply infinitely wall jump up a one-sided wall like you can in older Metroid games, or, for example, in Mega Man games. However, with the spider magnet on blue surfaces, you can do that, because their wall jumps function slightly differently. You can just hold back towards the wall as you're jumping off of it, and head back towards it immediately. Like right here. We do multiple wall jumps up one side of the wall just to get up a little faster. However, the interesting property that I want to discuss there is that you can still do regular wall jumps even off of spider magnet surfaces, which sometimes can make a big difference to room strats, because the momentum that you get off of those is very different. Deciding which wall jump to use and why is an interesting optimization in a lot of rooms, although I will not be pointing it out for the most part. As we're heading over to Cataras, there's not a whole lot more to talk about, so I will simply say, loading zones are very long. This is just an unfortunate fact. We need some elevator music. Arriving in Cataras, we're going to head to the left here through a fake wall, and then down this room, which has a lot of fire and death in it. Here, we'll have to talk to Adam again, which allows me to talk about Adam's save skip. Adam's save skip is a trick that one would be able to execute a few minutes from now, which would prevent one from having to talk to Adam at all for the rest of the run, which saves a lot of time because it skips all of these cutscenes. However, Adam's save skip is incredibly difficult. Again, it is of a similar nature as the Magus skip that I mentioned before, and I do not, as of yet, execute it during my runs, so also not this one. However, it is a very cool trick, and I recommend you look it up. We will be performing a different sequence break later on in the run that leads to the same effect as Adam's save skip, i.e. not needing to talk to Adam anymore after that point, but unfortunately that skip will only happen about an hour into the run, and the majority of Adam cutscenes have already passed at that point. The first section of Cataras, which we're going through right now, is a bit of a maze of needing to go around, shooting some enemies and climbing some walls, to find all of these different buttons that we have to press in order to advance to the next region, Dyron. We're going to be going around in lots of strange circles, and it's not a particularly riveting section of gameplay. However, it involves a bunch of cool room strats and slick wall jumping that I think is very nice to look at. Like right here. Nope. I forgot I did that during this run. Here we're finally into the Cataras Emmy zone, which features Gremmy, or as I like to call him, Larry, who is, in my opinion, the most annoying of all the Emmys. We got some good RNG here, but for most of Larry's rooms, he has some very annoying spawn points that are directly in your way, and he can be a pain to deal with. I believe on this run I got quite lucky, but Larry has killed many, many of my runs. And there exists some interesting clips with some very colorful language about this man. Here we will hang onto the ceiling while invisible to make Larry not realize that we're here, and then drop past him so we can advance. That is the safe strat to do in that room, and it is a lot slower than simply going through there and dodging Larry, but unfortunately the latter is extraordinarily difficult, and it would not be a good idea to perform in a marathon. Or if you're just new to the game, for that matter. Here we hit another lava switch to activate that pump up there, which is going to allow us access to the top region of this side of Cataras. We kill some more of these flying dolphin-looking things, and then we just hang on to this thing as it drags us up. We are going to press another lava switch, which I believe is the third to last one of the section, if I remember correctly. This little guy right here on the other side of this door always respawns every single time you enter the room, no matter under what circumstances. And as far as I know, he is rather unique in that. There are not a lot of enemies in this game who respawn every single time a room is loaded, and definitely none of that enemy type, if I remember right. So, hooray for him. As we're going here, another piece of generalized movement tech that I would like to mention is Respin Momentum. Respinning refers to when Samus is in the air but not spinning, and then you press jump again to cause her to go into the spinning state. While in the spinning state, Samus is forced into moving forward continuously, so when you activate a respin, it gives Samus a boost of momentum on the spot. This can be very useful to occasionally clear some ledges in rooms that happen to check out that way, and because Samus also has a slightly smaller hitbox when she's spinning versus when she's simply falling, it can make for a couple big differences in a few later rooms. Additionally, when you activate Respin, it immediately accelerates Samus to her maximum falling speed, even if she didn't have it before, which, again, contributes to being able to clear some ledges or make some gaps in some later rooms. That room just there, right before we entered the Emmy zone, was an example of that. If I hadn't respun, I wouldn't have been able to make that ledge, and would have simply grabbed onto it rather than landed on it, which would have been a little bit slower. Here we once again use the little ledge hopping thing in conjunction with a wall jump to go through that room quite quickly. And here we yet again press one of these lava switches. It is possible to do a very swaggy strat in that room, similar to the first time we pressed one of those switches, where as the charge shot is heading for the switch, you slide back underneath the wall and gain a little bit of time by moving forwards already in the cutscene. But in this case, it's much tighter than the first one because the button is slightly up, so you need to angle your shot slightly up, which has a little bit more end lag, so it becomes a lot more difficult to actually get that slide. I didn't even go for it this time because if you mess it up, sometimes the shot doesn't actually hit the button anymore, and it costs a bunch of time. Here we jump over Larry and then immediately turn invisible to get past him. In that room, he always spawns in the same spot, so luckily I've gotten a lot of good practice at going through that room quickly. That room that we just went through with that pump is where one would execute Adam's save skip, should you have it in your route. But again, I do not, so I did not do it. Also, we would have performed it way earlier. We would have gone to that room sooner than we did just now and performed it then, but for right now, this is the way it is. We're going to head back up here where we pressed this switch before, and now we can finally progress into the final few rooms of Cataras. We grab that energy tank to give ourselves a bit more of a buffer, and then press our final lava switch. In this next room, managing the charge beam is the most important thing to do, where we're going to jump into that guy, charge up another charge beam, shoot this guy, charge up another charge beam, shoot this guy, and then jump over the last one while charging another charge shot to shoot the last guy. That's going to allow us to go through that room very, very quickly, and very, very murderously. Once again, loading zones are very long. 'Tis unfortunate. we've now finally made it to Dyron, where we're going to be quickly picking up an item and then immediately heading back to Cataras. This next region of Dyron has some cool rooms in it in terms of movement, but they will not feature anything new. They will simply be combinations of all of the techniques that I've already explained, so please enjoy. Here we're going to do a pretty smooth slide jump into the next room to grab onto that ledge. And then we will do some very smooth ledge hopping to make an early cycle on that bat. It's a little bit dark in here. Why don't we turn the lights on? With the power on in this region of Dyron, we can now open a bunch of the doors that were inactive before. Most importantly, the one that leads us to the wide beam item, which is what we came here for. Taking damage from that bat there is completely intentional. It's a little bit faster than taking the time to kill him, and we don't really need the health, so damage tanking there is fine. Now we have the wide beam, which finally means I don't need to aim so well anymore. Unfortunately, wide beam boxes like this one on the right are very finicky items, and they do not really function the way that they're supposed to, so you need to get very close to them or at very particular other distances in order to actually be able to open them. This is the first appearance of the yellow Emmy, aka Aaron. He's also quite annoying, although not as annoying as his green brother Larry, but he can get in your way very badly later when we come back to Dyron. For right now, like I said, we're going to head back to Cataras with the wide beam in tow, which is going to allow us access to our next central unit and our next Emmy fight. As we enter Cataras, we're going to use the wide beam to very easily kill a few enemies, and then charge up a charge shot to open up another wide beam block, like before. And in this case, I'm going to take no chances, as missing this wide beam block can sometimes lead to taking damage. You might have seen that room and thought, why would it lead to taking damage? There's no enemies there, but it can be finicky with the way that the charge beam timer checks out, to where if you take some extra time to kill enemies up there, you might get hit by the robot and then, like, lose the charge beam cycle for the wide beam box. It's finicky and difficult to explain, so pardon my poor explanation. Killing this central unit will once again give us the Omega Cannon, which we can use to kill this next Emmy. And we don't really need to move very far, as when we exit the room, Larry will be right there. So we're simply going to stand still and shoot him. You can do this very quickly and actually kill Larry before he ever enters that tunnel in front of us. Let's see if I can do it. Yay! That saves a second or two. A bit more, maybe. Killing Larry will finally give us the tried and true Morph Ball item, which is an absolute classic from all over the Metroid series. And with it, we can go back to Artaria, the first region of the game, and do some more things there. The Morph Ball will be very important throughout all of this run. Additionally, the Morph Ball would be the item that would allow us to do Invincibility Glitch and Ledge Warping, if this were the Major Glitches category, but since it's not, we will not be executing either of those. Here, with the Morph Ball in tow, there's some interesting things to mention about tunnels. Tunnel movement in Metroid Dread has a lot of small nuances to it, in terms of, your falling speed, your sliding speed, your walking speed, and how all of these things interact when you morph and unmorph. Using the Morph Ball or not using it at the right time is absolutely integral to moving through tunnels as fast as possible, and depending on the situation, you want to do different things. So tunnel movement is very interesting from a runner's perspective, but it's too much to explain right now. Here we're going to take our first teleportal of the run, which will be the red one, to get us back to Artaria a little bit faster. And again, loading zones are very long. It must be noted that loading zones would be a little bit shorter if I were playing on a digital copy of the game, but since I'm playing on a physical copy, they're both a little bit longer generally and a little bit more inconsistent as well. So unfortunately, because of that, it's always difficult to compare runtimes between digital and physical copies. Here we're going to use the Morph Ball to climb into these little tunnels which are above the water region in Artaria that we went through before. And then we will enter into this little gauntlet of needing to dodge a bunch of fire. I will not be dodging the fire. We're going to use a combination of all of the different movement techniques that I've already reported on to get through here as fast as possible. Sliding through gaps, jumping up walls, mantling over ledges a little bit quicker, doing slide jumps here and there. This section always feels very smooth to do, although missing that shot did not feel great, let me tell you that. And here, after opening up this charge beam door to save a little time, we're finally going to pick up the Varia Suit. Another classic item, the Varia Suit is going to allow us to be protected against temperature damage, or at least heat damage. It's also going to make the dash melee slightly more powerful, which is cool, I guess. It doesn't really matter. But it also makes the dash melee a different color, which is interesting. Here, I was actually supposed to kill that robot, but I forgot, and unfortunately the resulting situation is very nasty. I'm going to be confused for a little while, and then decide that just taking the time to kill the robot is probably for the best. It was not very pretty. However, with the Varia Suit, we can head through these heat rooms mostly safely, and go back to that teleportal through which we came here for yet another loading zone, before heading back to Cataras to do some more stuff. Probably the worst thing about Metroid Dread is that or at least about speedrunning Metroid Dread, is that it's so filled with these long loading zones. So I definitely recommend, if you're looking into speedrunning this game, if you don't already have one, maybe consider getting a digital copy, because running on physical has been very annoying for me. The load times are still long, even on digital, but they're a lot more manageable. Then again, there are also advantages to having longer loading zones where you don't have to do anything. Very often during my streams, I'll just take this time to go refill my water bottle, or maybe grab a snack, because you have about 30 seconds each time. With the Varia Suit and the Morph Ball, we can head into this little section here, where we're going to head through a bunch of Morph Ball tunnels to get to our next goal, which will be the Kraid boss fight. Kraid is a very, very cool boss fight in this game, both casually and from a speedrunner's perspective, and I find myself enjoying that fight as much as I did the first time, every single time that I do it. It is one of my favorite parts of this run, and it is extremely satisfying to do quickly as well, since the strats for it are very cool. The Kraid boss fight is another place where, had I been using Turbo, that would have mattered, because the Great Boss fight is sped up significantly by using Turbo. But, like I said, for right now, I considered it a little less appropriate to use Turbo, since this run is intended as a submission to a marathon. I'm not sure why I feel that way, but I like it better this way. Kraid gave us pretty good RNG there. The more claw attacks he does, the better, and the more ball attacks he does, the worse. So giving us a claw attack right on the start is definitely very nice of him. Here we have to shoot Kraid's belly button so that he will continue to attack us and eventually get confused and shoot so many little weird spiky shark things that the platform on the left will come down so that we can climb up and shoot him. Only his mouth is vulnerable. No other region on his body actually takes damage, although his belly button does have a little bit of like health associated with it, quote unquote, in order to determine whether or not Kraid should let you up. Ideally, there is some RNG to Kraid actually giving you a different version of that weird shark thing attack, where you can just climb up them manually instead of having this platform fall down. Optimally speaking, Kraid could do that attack as the very first thing he does, and you'd immediately get up there, but that would be kind of incredible RNG, as that attack is fairly rare. Defeating Kraid will give us the Diffusion Beam, which will be a very useful item that we're going to see pretty much everywhere. It is a permanent passive upgrade to the Charge Beam, which was already one of the most useful items we had. But now, our Charge Beam shots will explode on impact, which allow us to shoot things that are slightly through walls, as well as deal way more damage. As we're entering into this loading zone, I would like to take a moment to talk about the Instant Charge. The Instant Charge is a trick that I've already used a bunch of times throughout the run ever since we got the Charge Beam. And it does what you'd expect. We can use the Instant Charge to instantly charge up a Charge Beam shot without needing to wait out the entire charge time. We do this by, as we're starting to charge the shot, turning Samus around, or alternatively, engaging a spin jump, and then by releasing the charge button at the correct time, we can release the charge shot as though it had been fully charged, even when it hadn't. Here's an example. I jump up, I shoot down, it's a full Charge Beam shot with the Diffusion Beam active, even though I never charged it. Heading straight into something else, we're about to do a sequence break called Early Grapple Beam, where we're going to use slide jumping, one, and then pretty soon we're going to do it again, to get through this room way before we're supposed to be able to, and get over here to this elevator to Artaria. Slide jumping, as I've explained it before, is similar to roll jumping from Donkey Kong Country. You slide off of a ledge, and while you're in the air, but Samus is still in the sliding animation, you press jump, and you're allowed to jump while you're in the air, which you normally wouldn't be able to do. It's a very useful technique, and while it doesn't make any other sequence breaks possible in this run, Early Grapple Beam as a sequence break is very important, and is a lot of time save, so it's very important that we be able to do it. With all that said, what we actually achieved by doing this is getting the Grappling Beam early, which is why we're going to Artaria. Normally, you'd be expected to enter this Grapple Beam gauntlet just before getting the item from a different angle, from a different part of Artaria, but because we didn't do that, we're coming from the top here instead of this door on the left. After we have the Grapple Beam, we're going to head right back up to that same door, and head back to Dyron, which is where you'd normally be expected to go after getting the Grappling Beam. You're just not supposed to come from there to begin with. The Grappling Beam is going to let us open up these Grappling Beam boxes as well as Grappling Beam doors, and latch onto grapple points like this one to swing across gaps. We're going to use it to get out of this room and go back to Dyron, like I said. This entire first 35 minutes of the run is pretty much self-contained in the first 3 regions of the game, but from here, things are going to open up significantly. With the grappling beam, we're going to clean up a little bit around Dyron and then go around to Perinia, and then after doing some more things there, the game will really start to speed up. However, as the amount of areas that we're traversing increases, so do the amount of loading zones, and so there's going to be quite often little interruptions where I really don't need to say anything, and I can just take a second to breathe, which is good for me, but less so for the quality of the commentary. Here we're going to do some clever jumps to get around this room a little bit faster than had we gone all the way up the top. That's known as reverse early grapple, although some people have called it late grapple as a joke. We're going to talk to Adam again, and then head into the Dyron Emmy zone.
Uploading data. This area you are.
I said before that there would be a point later where we would be kind of blocked in our path in Dyron by the Dyron Emmy, Aaron, and that would be right now. You can see that he's right there, and so I'm going to go up here to try to dodge him. On this run I managed it, but sometimes it's very easy to get caught there, and it's very scary. Which is why I consider Aaron to be probably second only to Larry in terms of how bad the Emmys are. Unfortunately took some damage there, but luckily it doesn't really matter. I have terrible experiences with that room from running on Dread mode. Nice aim. Here I'm going to try to get some shots in on that block on the right before the cutscene interrupts me. I got a little bit of damage in, but not nearly as much as I could have. Exactly once I have managed to actually blow up that block before the cutscene began, which was impressive, but I still have never managed to recreate it. Here we're going to open up this red missile door now that the power is back on, just like before, and acquire the bombs. Another classic item that in this game shows up much later than it would in a lot of the earlier Metroid titles, but even in this game a very useful item. In any percent NMG, it doesn't see the most use. It's a lot more practical in 100%, where a lot of bomb jumps will be executed that allow a lot of items to be acquired earlier than they're supposed to. In this category, we're really only going to use the bombs for two things. One is we're going to use them to blow up bomb blocks, since they're the only thing that can. And two is we're going to use them for a glitch known as underwater bomb jumping, which is exactly what it says. It's bomb jumping, but underwater. Actual bomb jumping in other situations isn't really useful in any percent NMG, but underwater bomb jumping is. We will see the first instance of this a little ways later, when we're over in Perinia, but for right now, I will leave it to future me to explain how that works. Flying spike. I got a little distracted by the spike when I was running and forgot that I actually needed to step on the platform. Say it with me. Loading zones are very long. Now, we've finally broken out of the rut of only being in the first three areas, and we've found our way to Perinia, which is very wet and very dark. But it's a very cool area, and I quite like this first section of it. We're going to do a lot of cool movement through here. Again, it's only going to consist of techniques that I've already shown, already explained, but I think it's very interesting to watch, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do when I play it. After talking to Adam, there's going to be a cool room where we parry one enemy, and then do a respin, which will give us just enough speed and a just small enough hitbox to get past another enemy without getting caught by it. And then, ideally, I would jump past the bat and grab the grappling grab the grappling, like, platform above him. I did not quite manage that. I got knocked by the bat back into the water, but luckily didn't get caught by the enemy beside it, so we're mostly still okay. Here, once again, we'll do some interesting tunnel movement. And then we're going to do a bunch of slide jumps to get through these water gauntlets a little easier. We're going to try to jump over that cactus and fail miserably. We're going to do that same thing again. Parry this bat. Try to put some bombs in those guys, but again, fail miserably. And then open up this grapple block from all the way over here. It really doesn't matter where in that stretch of floor you do that, and so I've opted to just do it immediately because it looks funnier, but really there's no reason to do anything. Luckily, I can now talk about something a bit more substantial than simple movement. We have the flash shift. The flash shift is a very important ability, and we're going to be using it almost literally every few seconds for the entire rest of the run. Since it's just an ability that recharges, and it speeds Samus up significantly, so naturally we want to use it as much as possible. It will allow us to go over those pressure plates without activating them, which allows us to go through the doors behind them without them closing. Additionally, it's going to let us make early cycles on enemies and do all sorts of funny stuff throughout the entire rest of the run. In this room, after clearing the fishes and blowing up some gun blocks, we're going to do our first instance of underwater bomb jumping. Normally, if you're underwater and you lay multiple bombs in a row, after a certain point, Samus would stop gaining height from them, just because the game doesn't want you to infinitely bomb jump your way out of water when you're not supposed to. However, if you do one bomb jump, unmorph, lay a bomb, and immediately go over there, you can actually get one more bomb's worth of height out of bomb jumping than you would if you just did it the ordinary way, which allows us to do a few interesting sequence breaks. Just there, in that room, all it did was speed up the room a little bit. We're entirely supposed to be able to go over here right now, and that wasn't a sequence break in that regard, but it did save about 10 seconds. Later on in the run, we're going to use that trick 1, 2, 3 more times to do actual sequence breaking, and that will be the last that we see of it. Now, with the flash shift, we can head back to Dyron from a slightly different angle, using a different transporter to get here, which should allow us access to the central unit mid-boss, and subsequently, the Emmy. In this next room, there's a slightly faster strat than what I did, which I only found out about this morning, when I was recording this, so it is possible to go through this room significantly quicker than I'm doing. Here we're just going to use the flash shift a bunch to make this room faster, and using it in the proper places to where it will always be recharged when we need it to, and then we're going to fight a central unit again. I was trying to mash to skip a cutscene here, where you mash plus and minus alternatingly to skip the cutscene as soon as possible, but I forgot that there isn't actually a cutscene here, and after I realized that, I got very embarrassed. With the Omega Blaster, or Omega Cannon, or whatever it's called again, we're going to kill yet another Emmy. This one is rather difficult, and it took me a long time to learn properly. So let's see if I can do it. That was pretty much perfect. Textbook. Killing Aaron here will give us the speed booster, which again, if you're familiar with Metroid, is an item that you've probably seen quite a lot already. It's featured in almost every Metroid game, and if I'm not mistaken, every 2D Metroid game except for the first two. But the speed booster in this game functions in some very interesting ways. You don't need to hold any buttons to activate it, you just press in the left stick once, and then it'll be active for the rest of that run. And it has a few interesting properties to it. The speed boost doesn't stop if you wall jump, for instance, which means you can make some really cool parkour things happen, like right here. where we're going to preserve our speed boost all the way up there to break through the blocks and grab that missile pack. Unfortunately, I did not get the Shine Spark there, but alas. We'll do this one, though. Shine Sparking is a cool technique that the Speed Booster allows you to do, where you can hold down after Samus has built up a full speed boost, and store up this massive amount of energy, and then as soon as you press jump, Samus will just go blasting off in whatever direction you choose. It's very Team Rocket of her. Here we're going to use the Grappling Beam to clear that block, and then head into our next region, Farenia, which we're going to very briefly visit before popping back down into Diamond. As we enter Farenia here, I'm going to do a quick wall jump and then flash shift back into the wall to grab this ledge. You could also do a wall jump there, for instance, in other rooms, to do a wall jump, flash shift back into the wall, and immediately get another wall jump. This is a useful technique to know. Here we're going to be fighting our first robot Chozo soldier, whom we're going to very quickly dispatch by the use of 2 Shine Sparks. So we're going to run across the bottom of the room, store up a Shine Spark, and bash him in the face. And then do that one more time. And that's the fight. This right here marks pretty much exactly the halfway point of the run. We are now going to use the Speed Booster to acquire another large missile upgrade. And then we're going to take this elevator back down to Dyron once again. In a cutscene that we skipped just before that robot Chozo soldier, Quiet Robe turned off the Emmys as well as opening up a new room in Verenia that we couldn't go to before. So with that done, we're going to go back to Verenia and continue on into further regions of the game. Right here we will need to talk to Adam, and then I will have to use a charge beam to blow up a white beam block again, although I believe I forgot that that was a thing during this run. Ideally you would start charging the charge beam before you even leave this room, but I'm pretty sure I forgot. Yes, I did. How embarrassing. Unfortunately, there's just not a whole lot to talk about right now, so I believe I'll just not say anything. In a second, when we arrive in Verenia, it will get interesting again, hopefully, since we now have the speed booster and the flash shift, meaning that things are going to look a little bit different for us. The mid-game of this category is not particularly interesting. Between Kraid and a trick that we're going to be doing later, there's just not a whole lot going on. Right here I'm going to use a Shine Spark to kill this enemy. We already killed him with bombs before, and doing it with a Shine Spark is slower, but I like to do it just to make extra sure that he dies in the most agonizing way possible. Normally, you'd like to speed boost through this Morph Ball tunnel, but on this run I missed the strat, so we just have to roll through there very slowly and sadly. Like a peasant. Here, a quick flash shift should make sure that you don't get hit by that laser, but again, I missed it. I got the second one though, which is a lot tighter, so that's cool. Here we parry this guy, and now we're going to do Drogiga Skip. This skips Drogiga, as the name implies, and this trick is actually just a pseudo-wave, like we've done before. It's not all that difficult if you know the setup for it, but unfortunately I'm messing it up quite terribly. Drogiga is a boss in a room filled with water that's extremely slow to fight, and so executing this skip saves a lot of time. Again, I'm messing it up, but I'll immediately turn invisible and use the grappling beam to go past these cactus guys when they can't see me, which makes this room a lot easier to traverse. Then, we can finally make our way to the lush jungle region of Gavaran, where a lot of interesting things are going to happen. When we arrive in Gavaran, I'm going to use the grappling beam to move through the first two rooms, and then immediately enter into another boss fight with another robot Chozo soldier. This one a little more difficult than the last one, since in the room itself, there won't be enough room to build up a Shine Spark. So we can still Shine Spark the robot once, since we can build up a Shine Spark outside of the room, but we cannot do it a second time, and so we just need to kill it normally, which is both slow and a little annoying. Excuse me. We will simply pump him full of missiles, as using charge shots doesn't really increase the amount of damage that we deal over time. Then we're going to immediately grappling beam up to grab that ceiling, and enter into the Emmy zone. The Emmy is currently deactivated, so we really don't need to worry about it, and we're just going to move as fast as we can. Jump over the crab. And unfortunately we do need to talk to Adam, which I forgot, hence that weird movement.
Uploading data. Samus, the Emmy one.
From here, we're going to head down to go find the super missiles, which aren't really a terribly interesting item overall. They're just kind of a passive upgrade to the missiles that improve their power and allow you to open super missile doors. They also make the rate of fire for the missiles a little bit worse than it used to be, and so they're actually a pretty bad weapon if you're trying to go for combat. In general, until we find the second missile upgrade, we won't really be using missiles in combat at all, just because it's not really worth it. But luckily, the second missile upgrade really isn't very far out, so we won't need to wait long. Instead, in a lot of cases where otherwise missiles might have been useful, we're just going to opt for charge beams instead, since the main point of using missiles in combat is usually the fact that they have an area of effect anyway, the missile explosion, and since we do have the diffusion beam, we can just do that with a charge beam anyway. Now we're heading into the smallest region of the game, Elan, where we will get exactly 2 items. I almost said 1, but no, but it is 2. It is 2. Elan would normally be a big plot point and a big deal, but in the speedrun, it's a lot less so. It's still important that we go here, as we do need the item we're going to get, and we also need to change the game state by watching a few cutscenes, but it's not the most interesting part of the run necessarily, and the item that we get here isn't necessarily very interesting either. So there's not too much to say about that, but the region itself has some cool movement in it. We're going to use bombs to be blowing up bomb blocks, and then using the flash shift to move through rooms as fast as we can, as always. But we're also going to do some interesting damage tanking to get through some rooms a little bit quicker, and jumping over enemies, sliding past them, in all sorts of creative ways. And I think this section is rather fun to execute. The item we're about to get is the Plasma Beam. It is a passive upgrade to the beam that simply makes it more powerful and gives it the ability to pierce through enemies, allowing you to hit multiple targets at once. Walls will still stop it, though. The Plasma Beam can also open Plasma Beam doors, like the one on the left. With our new Plasma Beam in tow, we're going to head back up this room where we were before, although there's a lot more enemies in it now. Flash shift past these fire-breathing guys, and climb up the wall here to head into our next boss fight, which will be a Chozo soldier infected by the X. The X are these strange floating organisms that you see flying around in the air all the time. That will only happen as soon as you reach Elon, and that's the game state change that I was talking about. Enemies all over the world have now been infected with X, and have changed their behavior, as well as dealing more damage to Samus, and usually having more health. Next to that, if you kill an enemy that's infected with X, and then do not run over to the X that is freed from its body, that X will take a minute and then simply reform into a different enemy. So you have to absorb all of the X's from enemies that you kill if you want them to stay dead. However, for this mini-boss, we are forced into doing that, we have zero choice, and he will stay dead forever. Now we're going to grab this energy tank. Just to be very, very safe, grabbing this 5th energy tank is generally a good idea, I find. Otherwise it becomes a lot easier to die on the final boss. I jumped over that guy on the bridge, and there's an interesting reason for that, which allows me to talk about a strange property that Metroid Dread has, just like a lot of other Nintendo games. It's a little prone to crashing, more so than most games. And there's a lot of different situations that can cause the game to crash, but one of them is using the speed booster and running full speed ahead into that enemy on the bridge. So instead, we just jump over him, since while you're using the speed booster, being in the air really isn't any slower than being on the ground, and that way, that enemy never dies, and we avoid the chance of crashing. There's another few things later in the run that can cause the game to crash sometimes, and most of them are hard to avoid, and so you just kind of have to pray. But luckily, the crash chance is very small, and I've in fact never had it happen. I've seen it happen to plenty of other people, but I myself have never had any crashes in Metroid Dread. Well, now that we have the super missiles and the plasma beam, we can open 2 new types of doors, which will allow us access to the next central unit that we need to kill the Gavaran Emmy, aka Moran. Moran can be a bit annoying to deal with. When she looks at you, if you're close enough, you become frozen, and that can be very scary because that gives her some extra time to catch up to you and potentially grab you. But luckily, all of her spawn points are fairly lenient, so you don't really need to worry about it most of the time, especially since she moves a little bit slower than most of the other enemies. Warning, I suck at this room. Here, we're using underwater bomb jumps to do a little sequence break, skipping a lot of the mid-side of Gavaran. Unfortunately, afterwards, we have to jump up all of these mushroom things, while there's this beetle chasing us, and I am truly incredibly bad at this section. We have already lost around 20 seconds to me just jumping around like a goofball, and I have done so much worse than that in the past. Unfortunately, Moran spawned right there, which means I couldn't speed boost kill this central unit. Usually, if you use a Shine Spark to hit the central unit before its armor comes off, then the armor will just immediately break, which is very helpful. And there is enough room here to charge up a Shine Spark, but unfortunately not if Moran is standing right there. So if you get a little unlucky and that's where she spawns, then you just have to fight this central unit with missiles, which is a lot slower. Next up, we're going to use the Omega Cannon to blow open this door, and then use the flash shift with a couple wall jumps to make it over to the other side of the room, and open up that door on the left, where Moran will then walk through, so we can do a very easy kill setup on her. To do this, you do need to open that door from the left side in advance, which is what I did just before we came down here, by using a quick charge beam shot and opening that door. And that's Moran down. This is where we get the second missile upgrade, the ice missiles. And usually, you don't even really need to use the super missiles for anything at all other than opening doors, so the decreased fire rate doesn't matter. But in this case, because we couldn't Shine Spark the central unit, we actually did have to shoot it with missiles, and that decreased fire rate cost us some time. However, the increased damage does mostly make up for it, so it's kind of the same as if we'd just been shooting it with regular missiles. Now that we have the ice missiles, our missiles freeze enemies, which I'm sure nobody saw coming. That means we can blow up these fiery mushroom things, which should open up the way into the next region of the game. I'm having a little trouble climbing up here, but when I do, we're going to use the grappling beam in conjunction with the ice missiles to open up this barricade and get ourselves to this next transporter. This transporter will lead us to Farenia, where we're going to execute a trick known as early space jump. Early space jump, as the name suggests, is going to allow us to pick up the space jump item much earlier than we're supposed to. In addition to that, I already alluded to this trick far earlier in the run, around 18 minutes in, when I pointed out the existence of Adam's save skip. Doing early space jump sets a similar property as Adam's save skip, where we no longer need to talk to Adam anymore in any situations, which is very nice, and will save about a minute over the course of the run, over the last few Adam cutscenes that are hereby skipped. But that's not really the main reason why we do early space jump. The main reason is to acquire the space jump. Unfortunately, I missed my speed booster here. Ideally, you would do a Shine Spark to get through this room and do this a little faster, but since I missed it, I'm not going to do that. This is early space jump. Unfortunately, I missed it once, but the trick is a combination of clever slide jumps, wall jumps, and other jumps, plus quickly morphing, laying a bomb, and unmorphing again to make the whole thing work. We can blow up those 3 bomb blocks that are there and come through to the space jump from the back door. This skips needing to do a whole bunch of stuff, as well as severely sequence breaking the game, which causes us to no longer have to talk to Adam, like I said. With our new space jump, we can make it across gaps like these by simply bouncing along, and we can go up here, where I'm going to make a terrible mistake. Twice. 3 times, even. Sorry, 4 times. Did I say 3? I meant 4 times. Yeah, that was a very embarrassing display, but that guy can be very annoying, as he's kind of just right there, and he tends to suck Samus in without you having much of a say in it. But there are good ways to avoid him, and quite frankly, I should have done it. We're going to shoot some gun blocks and open up this grapple block to head down here, where we're going to come back down to this elevator, which we already went down once before when we came in here to kill that robot Chozo soldier about 10 minutes ago. 10 minutes? A bit more than 10 minutes. As we're heading back down to Dyron, I have to mention that we're not really going to be doing anything much there. We're simply going to make our way to the purple teleporter, which we're going to use to get to Artaria, where we can actually get something done. Meanwhile, Dyron will be the first instance of not needing to talk to Adam, even though he would very much like us to. We're simply going to ignore him. We are very rude today. To which I might add, Elderbug is a cool dude. Using the flash shift and the speed booster, we can make our way through Dyron quite quickly to head over to the purple teleportal, all the way on the east side. We've been here before, but this time we're going to Shine Spark up through this room, and immediately flash shift over to the left, past that missile pack. And excuse me, this is not the purple teleporter, this is the yellow one. I am a fool. Not for the last time. Loading zones are very long. Here in Otaria, if it weren't for the wide beam, we'd be locked in right now. But with the wide beam, we can open up that door and then head down here, shoot this bat, and store a Shine Spark. This is going to be the only instance in the entire run where we Shine Spark directly downwards. We're going to go right past that guy, slide down here. You may recognize this area as one of the places where we were in the first 5 minutes of the run, back when we needed to get the charge beam, but this time we're going to take this door on the left. We're going to damage tank through a cold area, and then go past some of these guys to make our way to another cold area where we're once again going to damage tank, and then open up this door. Here we're going to perform a sequence break that's made possible by doing early space jump, and it's really the only reason that doing early space jump saves any time. First, we're going to do an underwater bomb jump to get up to this ledge, and then we're going to perform what's known as early screw, where we kind of jump up against this wall until Samus pops out of the water. The way that it works is strange and intricate, and I won't bother to fully explain it, but suffice to say, the wall kind of pushes Samus up a little bit. Here, we're going to do another underwater bomb jump, the last one in the run, and grab the screw attack. This right here allows us to skip the Z57 boss fight, which is cool for time's sake, but kind of a waste because that boss fight is very, very cool. I messed up the strat for this room, so unfortunately we do need to do one more underwater bomb jump, although normally you wouldn't do that, you'd do a Shine Spark instead. But since I messed up, we have to anyway. Early screw is a trick that you have to perform twice because you also need to do it once more to actually get out of this room. So we're going to do the same thing again, riding up the wall until Samus pops out of the water. Here I will do a Shine Spark, which doesn't save any time, but doesn't really lose any either, and it does look cool, so hence why I do it. Then we're going to space jump up this little zigzaggy area that we fell down all the way back when we were here the first time. And then go over here, heading back to where the red teleportal is. If you'll remember, we used this teleportal twice already, once to get to the Varia Suit and once to get away from it again. And now we're going to use it to go back to Cataras and do some more things around there. This sequence is a bit of a loading screen heavy sequence, and it's very boring as a result. First we're going to warp to Cataras, go through only 2 rooms, and then use a different teleportal to warp to Gavaran, from where we're going to immediately warp to Burinia, where we're actually going to do some new things. So this sequence is not particularly interesting, and I do not have a whole lot to say about it. A little grappling beam dance does always make me feel better. Here I'm going to use an instant charge to open up this door. It's a little bit faster. And then we've got some more tunnel movement. Like I've said a bunch of times already, tunnel movement is very strange, and I'm going to be doing a bit weird things with the morph ball and sliding around and whatnot. Trying to do it optimally, but presumably failing, since there's a lot that goes into it and it's hard to remember. We're going to use the ice missiles to blow up that mushroom, and then get a shine spark. Using this shine spark, we can go across this water a little bit faster than if we just space jumped over it, and then we can head down here to the green teleportal, where we're going to go to Barenia. We're really entering the end game of the run now, with the last 20 minutes already being on the horizon. And the end game for Metroid Dread has a few interesting properties in that it kind of slows down. There's a lot more area transitions in this part of the run than anywhere else, and not as much in the way of sequence breaks or tricks. It's just a lot of good movement, a few boss fights, and some cleanup, which I don't have too much to say about in most cases, but I think is quite fun to play through, at least. Here we're going to do a shine spark to solve a puzzle. Getting that perfectly is very, very rare, so I'm very glad that I did it. What I say when I mean getting that perfectly is storing that shine spark and blowing up the blocks that you're standing on at the same time. That can be very, very difficult, and usually it takes me 2 speed boosts, 1 to blow up the blocks and 1 to store a shine spark, to actually get through that puzzle. Here we've got some fishies that are going to try to bother us, but luckily we're extremely overpowered with the screw attack and the plasma beam, so they won't really be in our way at all. We're going to use a combination of regular gunfire, some instant charges, and the grappling beam to blow up this here barricade, allowing whatever that was, I really don't know, to fall down, which breaks open this pathway, which allows us access to the room where we can get the gravity suit. And finally, we no longer need to do little hops through the water to move adequately. Finally, we can just walk. Or, well, we can flash shift, but same difference, really. With the gravity suit, our shoulders become a little bit wobbly, and now we can store up this shine spark here, because we're no longer bothered by the water, to move up through the rest of this room a little more quickly. We can grab this missile pack as the last one in the run, bringing us up to 87 total missiles, and then we're going to fight another set, which we're going to do by using a combination of the screw attack and some plasma beam shots. Anytime that the robots are lined up, you want to use plasma beam shots, as if you can hit them both with your gun, then that's better damage than simply using the screw attack. But anytime they're far away from each other, or there's only one left, you'd prefer to use the screw attack, as that will get rid of them faster. We're going to use an instant charge to open up that door, which unfortunately I struggled with a little bit. And then we're going to go back to the green teleporter to make our way back to Gavoran again. With that, we now have the gravity suit, which is going to make it a lot easier for us to move in water, like right here, which will allow us to clean up the last few things around Farenia. Here we're going to use the grappling beam and then immediately get a shine spark, shine sparking up this very long room with the tree in the background, and then we're going to head toward our next boss fight, Golzuna, aka the Crab. This because Golzuna looks like a crab. We're going to kill Golzuna by doing a shine spark on his second form, and then doing another shine spark immediately on its third form. That will not be enough to kill the third form, not exactly, but we're just going to fire off some more charge shots and missile shots into the crabs behind to get rid of the rest of its health. This boss can be very annoying, and in fact this boss is another one of the places where the game sometimes inexplicably crashes. I've still never had it happen, but I've seen it happen to other people, and it does not look fun. As soon as Golzuna dies, she will spawn this Core X, which we're going to kill by Shine Sparking. Or at least we would, if we weren't really, really stupid. Unfortunately, I missed that Shine Spark, which made that fight a little bit slower than it needed to be. That's going to give us the Cross Bombs, which are a relatively useless item that we're going to use only a handful of times. We really only need them to get through this room here, directly after getting them, and other than that, they're only ever going to be minor time saves and nothing else. However, using the crossbombs, we can finally get on this side of Gavaran and take the transporter to Hanubia, the final region of the game other than the final boss room. Or like the final boss gauntlet. Hanubia is going to be a fairly short region and we're not going to spend a lot of time there, despite the fact that it looks rather big on the map. When we get there, we're going to run through it really quickly and then immediately go back down to Farenia to pick up the last few items we need. Here we're going to use the speed booster to get through these rooms nice and quick. Just continue shooting all of the doors as we run through them. And then kill this guy. He was so young. We will use the grappling beam, then the screw attack to blow up some blocks, and then we're going to perform one last sequence break, the pseudo grapple, where we clip the grappling beam inside of a wall rather than the regular beam to open up a grappling beam block from the wrong side. It's exactly the same trick as the pseudo waves that we've done a couple times already, but instead of using the regular power beam, we just use the grappling beam. That trick is also useful in a few other places, in a few other runs, but for any percent NMG, this is the only time we need it. This elevator will take us back down to Farenia, where we can clean up the last few things, like I said. This is going to involve getting 2 more major items, and killing the last Emmy. But other than that, there's not too much left to do. Here in Farenia, a lot of what we're going to be doing is just optimizing using the flash shift at the proper times, as well as using the screw attack in conjunction with regular attacks to kill enemies. I am not very good at this section, and you will come to see that. Every couple of seconds I'm just going to get hit by an enemy or bump into a wall or something, because I just don't know the layout of the rooms quite by heart yet. So it's not the best section to look at, but it's important that we go through here. Here we're going to leave the Emmy zone, lay a bomb here to get through, and then immediately re-enter the Emmy zone. We are currently on our way to find the Storm Missiles, which are the last missile upgrade that we're going to be getting on this run. They will allow us to charge up missiles and lock on to multiple targets at once, which we're going to need to open a few doors that lead us to the rest of where we need to go. To get this item, we need to kill SQ, which we're going to do here by using a Shine Spark to deplete a lot of its health, and then finishing it off with screw attacks immediately afterwards. Or at least that's what we would do. Once again, I woefully missed, and SQ will maintain most of its health, as I just Shine Sparked right past it, so unfortunately we needed to do that fight a little more slowly. Optimally speaking, you would Shine Spark SQ at the proper angle to where Samus kind of stays above it, even after she hit it, and then you can screw attack it very, very quickly, repeatedly, because you have it up against the wall. It's a very interesting strat, and it's very cool to see done, but I don't entirely know how to set it up. So, I don't usually do it. Now that we have this Yes, the screw attack. Now that we have the storm missiles, we can open the last few doors that we need to, including this one right here, which is slightly faster than simply going all the way around. And then we can enter back into the Emmy zone again from this same door that we came through earlier. But now, instead of going right at the top of the room here, we're going to go left, back out of the Emmy zone, to where we need the storm missiles. We will then start charging up another Shine Spark after killing this guy, which we're going to use to damage yet more Robot Chozo soldiers, which once again we're going to try to kill with a combination of the Plasma Beam and the Screw Attack, and they won't last terribly long, but this fight is honestly the most annoying of the four, at least on normal mode, because getting that Shine Spark can be a little bit tricky sometimes, and if you miss it, you miss out on a lot of damage, which makes the fight just last a lot longer, and sometimes they knock you off the platform, and everything just gets terribly messed up. That fight can get really out of hand. Here we've got a few cold rooms to get through, which makes it very good that we have the gravity suit, since it protects us against the cold. And then we're going to once again use the storm missiles to open up this door, block, wall thingy, and head back into the Emmy zone. Pretty soon here we'll be getting our second to last major upgrade of the run, which we'll do by killing the purple Emmy, which we haven't yet really seen, but yeah. I like to call this Emmy Fairy, since it lives in Ferenia, and it's hard for me sometimes to tell the difference between it and the blue Emmy. Here we're going to Shine Spark this guy, like we were supposed to do all the way back in Gaparan, and then the Screw Attack can take care of the second half of the central unit fight, making this easily the shortest and easiest of the fights. We're then going to use the Omega Blaster, as we have done so many times, to defeat this Emmy. It must be noted that there are, count 'em, I think 3 or 4 faster strats that can be done on this Emmy than I'm going to do, but I don't do any of them here because they're all relatively difficult to varying degrees and save varying amounts of time, and I'm just going to do the safe version just to make sure that everything's alright. This is also what I would do on a marathon, and this is what I've been doing ever since I picked up the game, just because I'm still not at the point yet where I'm confident enough that I feel like doing the harder, faster versions. I'm going to do a little dance here, I believe. Or at least I do on most of my runs. I suppose I didn't this time. That's very unfortunate. Oh no, there it is. I just waited a little while, that's all. Very good. Here, we don't really need to do anything. This safe strat is extremely easy. You just hold the button to shoot the Emmy and wait. And that's that. Killing the purple Emmy here will finally give us the long-awaited Wave Beam, which we've been replacing with the pseudo-wave trick ever since a minute and a half into the run. And now finally we do have this item. We don't even so much need it because we need it to shoot through walls. We could have done that with pseudo-waves or the Diffusion Beam, but unfortunately we simply need it to open doors that are hard-coded only to open when shot with the Wave Beam. So it feels a little bit bad to pick up, but we do need it at the end of the day, so. It will also increase our damage output, which is actually fairly useful since we still have 3 more bosses left in the run. But with the Storm Missiles and the Wave Beam in tow, we're free to head back up to Hanubia, and we have everything that we need to finish the game. From here, there are only about 10 minutes left in the run. Arriving back at Anubia, I know I usually do a speed boost here to kill this robot, but I believe I forgot in this run. Yes, I did. Using the screw attack will work just fine though, so it's really no worries. Very soon here, we're going to be heading into our first of 3 rapid succession boss fights. This is going to be the red Chozo Warrior. I call him Crimson, to be precise. we're going to simply mash the gun button to try to kill him as fast as possible. Again, had I been using turbo, as I am allowed to, this fight would be over a little faster, but since this is a submission for a marathon, I decided not to use it because I felt it inappropriate. My mashing, as you can see, is not great. I am rather out of practice with it since I've picked up using turbo. Luckily, we got some good RNG, and this fight is over relatively quickly all the same. Samus is simply going to eat him like a delicious smoothie. Nom. We are then also going to eat this Emmy, as we've been doing a lot of times already, and this will give us the final major upgrade of the run, the Power Bombs. The Power Bombs, as the name suggests, are a powerful version of the bombs, which can be charged up and then released. They have this giant blast radius that pretty much blows up everything around you, and they deal a good amount of damage. However, they're an extremely limited resource, and since we didn't pick up any additional Power Bomb packs anywhere in this run, we only actually have 2 of them. Luckily, enemies do drop them when defeated, so we're going to use that to our advantage. We only need a few of them anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. Here we're going to use Power Bombs to blow up the Power Bomb blocks above us, so we can make our way back to the left here. Then we're going to do that same thing again over here, and we're going to shoot some of these robots to refill on Power Bombs at least a little bit. Nice, we got 2 of them. Sometimes you only get 1 there and you're a bit sad, but this run got lucky. Here's one of those wave beam doors again. Here we're going to use a Shine Spark, and while we have it, we're going to lay a Power Bomb and then Bull Spark up, following the Power Bomb through the ceiling, leading us to this last little section here. We're going to blow up this grapple block and make our way to the penultimate boss of the game, Gold Boy, or Goldie. The Gold Spirit, Chozo Warrior, X, whatever you want to call it, is a pretty tough boss fight casually. In the speedrun it's a lot less bad since we know what we're doing, but it can still be quite punishing as he does a lot of damage. Just running into him once already does a full E-tank, so it can be quite rough, and I've lost a lot of runs to him just by not paying attention. However, it's not anything really new, and since we've done a fight almost exactly like this twice already, you probably know what to expect. And with that parry, Gold Boy is dead, and we are going to slurp him up the same way that we did his brother. And that leaves us completely free to enter the final region of the game, Itorash, which is very short. It consists of a mere 3 rooms and then the final boss. The final boss of the game, as you might be aware, is Ravenbeak, a Chozo who has remained uninfected by the X as of yet, and actually, back in the day, was one of the Chozo who donated DNA to Samus when she was a child. Therefore, he is sometimes called Dad by the Metroid Dread community, since part of his DNA is in Samus, but I prefer to call him the Beaky Boy, since it is a more endearing nickname. Ravenbeak's fight has a lot of RNG in it, and depending on how I react to it, we can gain or lose a lot of time. If I remember correctly, this run had a very good Beaky fight. We're going to use the speed booster here to get through this room a little bit faster, and then flash shift through this save room before laying a power bomb to blow up the Zebetite here. Whether or not that wall is actually made of Zebetite remains unconfirmed as far as I know, but we just call it that since it's very clearly a reference to the Zebetite in the original Metroid and in Super Metroid. In this cutscene, the Adam that we've been talking to all this game actually is revealed to be Ravenbeak all along, and then the fight begins. I'm going to hit Ravenbeak with exactly 9 missiles and nothing more, because this will give the shield that he's thrown up around himself the exact right amount of damage marked on it to where he's going to never turn fully invulnerable. I don't know how better to explain it than that, but essentially I can just do whatever I want from here on out as long as I only hit him during parries, and that way he will just have his first phase be over before he ever turns invulnerable. This can save around 20 seconds if you're relatively lucky on RNG. That was relatively lucky. One thing that I learned about doing this trick is that after you've done the first parry, you're actually free to just hit him with one more missile, and that will immediately force the next parry, which is obviously quite helpful as it makes you less reliant on RNG. I did not know that at the time of recording this run, and therefore did not do it. During the flying phase, we're going to abuse some iframes by damage tanking off of Ravenbeak's feet, and get through that Gatling gun attack a lot faster. Normally, that attack would take a while and he would spin around in circles as he chased you, but by simply doing this, he'll realize that he's not actually dealing any damage to you and just stop trying. It's very nice of him. In Phase 3, we're simply going to pump him full of gunfire, although, since I'm not using turbo, I don't really mash fast enough for it to be worth it. Luckily, after a second, I realized that and just switch back to missiles instead. Phase 3 is essentially the same as Phase 1, except he's gained a few new attacks, including this giant laser beam. Kamehameha. In cutscenes like this one, after parrying a boss, missiles deal less damage than they normally would, and so even with my poor mashing rate, it's still better to simply use the gun rather than missiles. That speed boost attack can sometimes be a little difficult to dodge, but I managed it. And with that parry, the Ravenbeak fight will conclude. We will skip this cutscene and a very long loading zone will begin. Time will be coming up in roughly 2 minutes. From here, there is really nothing more to do, save for this final fight, quote-unquote, with the Ravenbeak X, which is a weird conglomeration of all of the different bosses that we fought. Most notably, Kraid. All we have to do here is hold Y to kill it. There is a slightly faster strat to do this, where you only shoot it at particular points in this cutscene to make him move forward a little bit sooner, but still kill him. I've not yet begun to implement that, as I don't know exactly what the timing for it is, and I don't feel like risking it yet. But I will learn. When Ravenbeak X is dead, we have yet another cutscene to skip, the last one of the run that has any impact on our time, and then we have the escape sequence. During the escape sequence, one notable thing is that we no longer have access to the flash shift. That item has been completely removed, but we still have everything else. Our suit has been replaced with the Metroid suit, which makes us immune to damage and makes enemies die when they touch us, and our gun has been replaced by the Hyper Beam, which is this long, sustained beam of energy, like we saw in that cutscene just now, that wipes out anything it comes into contact with, whether it's enemies, terrain, or... well, really, it's just enemies or terrain. Oh. If you fail to shoot that guy, then he'll suck on you there, and you'll just be pulled back, and it's just, it just sucks altogether. Always take care to shoot that guy. As in any Metroid game, the escape sequence does have a timer and some stressful music, but we're going to make this timing very, very easily, and it is not anything to worry about. Here we're going to use a Shine Spark to get through this a little bit quicker, and we're going to do it in ball form rather than fully stretched out, because it skips a little cutscene of charging up. I'm going to try to use the speed booster here, but I didn't quite manage it. If you're very smooth, you can speed boost pretty much all the way through this entire area, which is very sick looking. Time. That is Metroid Dread any percent no major glitches, with hopefully adequate commentary. From here, I only really have a few things left to say. One is that at the time of recording, this run was a PB by almost 2 minutes for me, which was very unexpected, as I was just recording a run to submit to a marathon and I wasn't expecting anything much of it. But apparently, not having a chat to distract me, allowed me to focus so well on the run that I ended up mirroring my sum of best fairly closely. And even just talking about it now, my heart is thumping a bit, remembering how exciting it was at the time. It was a very cool run, and I'm very proud of it, but I know I can do a lot better, so I'm gonna keep pushing. There were a lot of things that I didn't or couldn't mention in this run, mostly small things, but still, there's a lot to learn if you are trying to learn this game. I recommend that you join the Discord server for it, which I will link in the video description. I also invite you to DM me or other runners with any questions that you might have. But with that said, I think that's all I have to say. I'm going to let the credits run out, and I don't know, enjoy the music. If you're still here all the way through this absolute blabbering that I've put out, thanks for that, I suppose. And for now, I bid you good luck. See you next mission.